The position of a breast cancer education officer is being sponsored by the Newcastle Permanent Building Society, which has gone into partnership with the Breast Cancer Institute of Australia. It's hoped the new officer will help educate the Hunter community, encouraging more women to be tested.
If we can educate the community and involve them, we reduce anxiety, we'll get support for research, and people will turn up and have a screening and it might save their life.
2,500 Australian women die from breast cancer each year, making it the biggest cancer killer among females. Caroline Blandon has been chosen for the job of educating people about the disease with a background in both science and education.
Well, my role would be to go out and to speak to as many community groups as I can, also to be involved in the production of material, for instance brochures that will be available.
Meanwhile, the Hunter's most modern breast screening centre is now up and running next door to the Heights Private Medical Centre. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
An old mate dropped in to help shore up support for Bob Horne in the Hunter's most marginal seat of Patterson. And it doesn't hurt when that mate is Laurie Brereton, Minister for Transport, and he's promising to put Raymond Terrace at the top of the Pacific Highway wish list.
Instead of it being a narrow two-lane duplication, under Bob's proposal it will be made four-lane and made four-lane at the very outset.
State Minister for Roads Michael Knight will visit the site on Friday. If he agrees to the plan, the Raymond Terrace bypass will become a priority of the Pacific Highway upgrade. And with Mr Brereton, the third runway issue is never far away, with today's announcement nearly drowned out by the local version of aircraft noise.
Well, that one wouldn't be allowed into Kingsford Smith, let me say.
An aircraft of a different kind for the arrival of National Party leader Tim Fischer, but he was no less noisy about Labor's highway pledge.
That is catch-up politics. The priority problem relates to Bulahdelah and the two bypasses that we will commence and complete within 12 months of the life of this coming parliament.
Earlier in the day, the Coalition Senate ticket introduced itself to the people of Newcastle, with the opposition trying to pick up an extra Senate position in New South Wales. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
School's out at Bulahdelah Central, and children as young as 6 and 7 are about to test their road sense against the heavy traffic of the Pacific Highway.
It's a worry to a lot of parents, because a lot of parents in this area, both of them work and they rely on the bus to take the children to school. Last year it was a safety issue. They recognised on safety grounds that we were unable to cross here adequately, and the kids did qualify for a bus pass. But this year nothing has changed, but we don't qualify for the free bus travel from this side of the highway.
A lot of country communities were hard hit by the government's revised school student transport scheme. Children living in a 2-kilometre radius of the school can no longer travel free. It will cost their parents up to $200 a year in fares for each child. Some just can't afford it, and the only other means of getting to and from school is over a narrow pedestrian refuge between a blind corner and 2 busy truck stops on the highway.
The bike's hanging over the edge of the so-called crossing. If there's a child on a bike and traffic going either way, then it's goodbye child, goodbye bike. And it's just not safe for the kids to cross.
We've been trying for 10 years, but unfortunately it's like the highway. I think unless we have a major accident, nothing will be done.
So far, appeals to reduce the risks have been rejected.
Safe crossing for the children, be it the bus or lights or a pedestrian crossing, just something safe.
Wayne Russell, a man on a mission, always moving fast, even on his own 2 feet. Russell can't get enough motor racing. As an owner of a VP Commodore, he's chasing the big budget acts like Brock, and he's gaining. But he's also racing a season in sprint cars, and now with a full-time mechanic on the payroll, he's running, pulling down and putting a sprint car back together in between bouts of touring car competition.
We leave tonight for Bathurst, and then from there we practice Saturday, qualify Saturday, and then Tetrans have chartered a plane for me to fly back Saturday night, run the sprint car Saturday night at the Motordrome, and then fly back Sunday morning to Bathurst to race back at Bathurst.
The different cars call for a different style of driving.
I'm going to have a problem, I think, if I get back to Bathurst on Sunday and I go barrelling down Conrod Strait, and then at the end of Conrod to Caltex, it's something like 270 or 80 kilometres an hour. I flick the thing sideways to get round the corner. I know I'm in big trouble.
The State Reserve, situated in a Gateshead residential area, has long been nothing more than an overgrown area of bushland, littered with rubbish. 16 long-term unemployed people are now rescuing the land through their involvement in a new work opportunities program run by the Department of Education, Employment and Training.
A bush regeneration project to restore the area and also fire hazard reduction.
The Lake Macquarie Environmental Rescue Group is managing the project with cooperation from Lake Macquarie Council. Once the site has been cleared, the group will begin regenerating the area. It's hoped it will eventually be used for school environmental projects.
Two of the local schools will be bringing their students on. They'll be doing environmental research, different flora and fauna of the areas, bringing the kids here and teaching them all about that.
The group will continue to work on the site for the next couple of months. Emma Siossian, NBN News. Hepatitis C is a blood-borne virus which was first detected in 1989. Proper clinical testing for the condition has only been available for the past 5 years. As many as 10,000 new cases occur each year, and according to the Hunter Public Health Unit, the disease is becoming more widespread.
Hepatitis C is a big problem in the hunter community. It's of concern because we still have little idea about how much there is out there or how much there has been in the past.
The number of cases of hepatitis C reported to the Public Health Unit have levelled out over the past couple of years, but doctors say it's still a major health threat. Diagnosed cases of hepatitis C represent 1/3 of all infectious disease notifications reported to the Public Health Unit.
It's a rather serious disease. A disease that affects the liver, hepatitis, is always serious and something that needs attention.
Emma Ossian, NBN News. Cloudy skies did little to dull showgoers' spirits, children enjoying the variety of rides and traditional sideshow alley entertainment. While organisers are hoping for larger crowds tomorrow, plenty of people still turned out today, all hoping for the chance to win a prize. In the ring, the show jumping was the main attraction, some class riders joining in the competition. The show continues tomorrow with a range of ring events and other entertainment. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
This half-completed road has had $15 million thrown at it in just 4 days. On Monday, Federal Transport Minister Laurie Brereton promised $7.5 million. Today, his state counterpart, Michael Knight, matched it dollar for dollar. The result will be a bypass expanded from 2 to 4 lanes, with work to be completed within 18 months. But Liberal candidate for Paterson, Bob Baldwin, says it's a cynical ploy to buy votes in the Hunter's most marginal seat.
We're dealing with a project here that's $48 million. We can duplicate it for only another 15. The gain from a relatively small increase in money is very substantial, and it'd be stupid not to do it.
Bob Baldwin says it's stupid to pump $15 million into the bypass when other deadly stretches of the Pacific remain unchanged. But Labor says work can't start immediately on those projects.
I agree that O'Sullivan's Gap is an extremely dangerous part of the road. But if you're going to get rid of it, where does the part that you get rid of it with start and where does it finish? That part of the road has not been planned yet.
Mr Baldwin says the plans have already been drawn up and has promised the work will be completed within 4 years, half the time of Labor's Pacific Highway schedule. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
A full house gathered in Taree for the Falcons' opening trial and the first look at new import David Van Dyke. He showed plenty of willingness to shoot the ball and was rewarded with 20 points. But the new look Falcons will understandably need some time to develop combinations. They were never in the match. The classy Magic outfit led by the sharpshooting Tony Ronaldson always in control. The two sides have another trial in Coffs Harbour tonight. In League, Charlestown put first pre-season points on the board last night, but from there it just went backwards for the Butcher Boys. South took 20 minutes to post their first, Michael Reid putting Gary Bray into space, who finished strongly, while Reid crossed for South second in the 28-8 victory. In the other match, the Bay beat Cessnock 13-12. A lapse at the back gave the Wolves their first. Kajoli presented with a gift in the 34th minute. David Lowe was brought down moments later, the Breakers captain equalising from the spot. Another mistake in defence gave Wollongong the first of 3 second-half goals, 7 minutes after the break. The home side slotted another before Peronich put the game beyond the Breakers. The disappointing result compounded when a dubious decision saw Clayton Zane dismissed for a second bookable offence 6 minutes from time. Nothing like a Dane's first run since the Melbourne Cup, exciting Gay Waterhouse and returning 4-10 for the win. The Apollo Stakes was the other feature at Warwick Farm, giving Darren Beedman a double. Another winner for Gay, Juggler returning 390, beating Saintly and Kingston Bay. South to Sandown now, where the Oakley Plate held centre stage. Stephen King and the 11-2 favourite Drum, giving Lee Friedman his second group victory of the day.
It's become a regular feature at one of Australia's oldest forts. Military enthusiasts attracted by the sense of history and the Big Bang.
Well, Fort Scratchley was in use as a coast defence battery for longer than any other fort in the country. It was finished and armed in 1882 and it fired its last shots in practice in 1962.
The firing was organised to highlight Newcastle Council's financial assistance in the restoration of the 6-inch guns, which defended the city against the Japanese in 1942. Councillor Greg Hees becoming the first mayor to fire the guns in more than a century. The meeting had one simple aim, to get two-person crews on all emergency call-outs in the Doyleson area. It follows a coroner's report last year, which criticised one-person crews following the death of a pedestrian at Charmhaven. And locals say lives are still being placed at risk, with ambulance officers having to call on bystanders to help at emergencies.
The ambulance officer had to call on the public, to one of the members of the public to drive. There was another case where a police officer was asked to drive the ambulance. They're not equipped to do this, they're not trained to do it. It's unfair.
But local member Jill Hall has defended the government's record, with extra officers now brought in to cover planned absences. She says the only time the station is left short is when officers call in sick.
We have managed to increase the incident of two-man crewing of ambulances from 86.9% to 95%.
But even 95% is not good enough. That means that there's 5% of the time that we have a one-man ambulance service to deal with possible critical cases.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News. It's a Sunday tradition that's about to come to an end at St Chad's on the Hill and St Drostan's. From next week, all Anglicans in the parish will have to go to All Saints, with the other two churches to close for at least 3 months.
One of the church elders said last week at a meeting that unless we combine to grow, we will be watching the parish go broke.
The biggest problem is that the congregation here feels that to a degree they've been steamrolled. Democratic decision-making processes have not occurred, and that the climate and the culture of this church is quite unique. It's very supportive and it's a growing community.
The parish council has emphasised that it's a trial, but even supporters admit that it's a risk.
Christian Back was one of the stars in yesterday's corporate triathlon, ensuring victory for his team with a startling performance on the bike. The teenager leaves for Europe in a couple of weeks to pursue a professional career.
And basically try and make a go of it over there. So I've just been preparing for that. This is part of the preparation.
Back is the Australian Junior Time Trial champion, and while in Europe will attempt to break into the Tour events, which is the most competitive road racing in the world.
Hopefully just go good in a couple of seasons over there and hopefully make pro rider.
Meantime, Peden will be up against the likes of Michael Hill and Gary Niewant in Perth this week as he bids for a place in the Australian Olympic sprint team.
Just after 6 o'clock last night, the fully laden coal train was on its way from the Dartbrook mine near Muswellbrook to Newcastle. It's thought a bogie on one of the wagons overheated, causing 8 wagons to run off the rails and crash into each other.
One of the wheels derailed and it's carried along for about 1 kilometre and then finally gone too far off the rail, stopped, and then the rest of the train has piled up behind it.
4 of the wagons tipped over, spilling a large amount of coal across the track. An environmental officer supervised the clean-up while technical crews assessed the damage to the buckled track and wagons. The derailment halted both passenger and freight services. About 30 coal trains use the line each day, but the derailment has not affected the loading of ships in Newcastle.
At the moment in the coalfields, it's affecting the Mount Thorley coal operations and the coal operations up around Muswellbrook, as well as Ulan and the Gunnedah coalfields.
Northern Explorer passenger services between Moree, Armidale and Sydney were also affected. Buses were used to ferry travellers between Muswellbrook and Maitland. The track is expected to be reopened by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to northbound trains, while the southern line should be cleared later in the afternoon. Freight Rail has launched a full internal investigation into the derailment. It's expected to be at least 2 weeks before results are known. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
The Newmarket is the feature of next week's 2-day Autumn Carnival and has once again attracted some of the nation's better sprinters. The Waterhouse stablemates head the top of the weights, followed by Star of Maple and Western Red. Saintly, Light Up the World and Cohort have all been treated well by the handicapper, as has Max Lee's Chlorophyll. In harness racing, the region has some bright 3-year-old prospects in Spirit of Cash and Half Pied. The latter trained by Guy Chappell maintaining its unbeaten record, taking out the $10,000 sire stakes at Tamworth. In motor racing, Wayne Russell and his touring car colleagues had a busy weekend, dodging everything Mount Panorama could throw at them. Russell's best finish in the 3 heats was 16th, while his sprint car assault on Saturday night was plagued by mechanical problems. Meantime, Graham Morris also impressed, but on 2 wheels, taking out the opening 2 heats in the Victorian Sports Bike Championship in Melbourne.
National Party candidate for Hunter, Michael Johnson, admits he's an optimist, needing a 13.9% swing. But his party isn't giving up on the safe Labor seat. The Shadow Minister for Primary Industry, John Anderson, asked staff at Beresfield's Steggles factory to examine Labor's record on trade promotion.
Interest rates are too high, transport inefficiencies are still legion. If you remove those impediments, you can grow a bigger industry.
It was a case of deja vu at the RAAF base in Paterson. The Minister for Defence, Gary Punch, was snapping at the heels of his coalition counterpart, Jocelyn Newman, who made her plea for the Defence Force vote yesterday. While the coalition's main carrot to the Defence Forces is a guarantee that there'll be no cuts to the current $10 billion defence budget, Labor says it's gone one better. If re-elected, the government will improve services to defence personnel. But the hidden catch is the promise won't be fulfilled until after the turn of the century.
We are committed to a real increase, a modest real increase in growth in the defence portfolio.
But that won't be till after the next election, will it?
No, but...
Meanwhile, the minister's chaperone for the day, local member Bob Horn, was coming to terms with the harsh realities of a backbench position, forced to deal personally with a flat tyre and dented campaign chariot.
Well, I think the Libs have been here.
Bit of sabotage, you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon it's sabotage, that's for sure. Yeah.
The stress of a month of almost undiluted politics was also getting to one voter today who exposed more than his political colours in a bid to highlight the plight of small business.
Things are desperate. I don't have much else I can take off. Things are very desperate.
Businessman Greg Smith bared all in a newspaper advertisement, warning voters of the burden he says Labor's superannuation and unfair dismissal laws have placed on small business. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
The ARL-aligned Knights could be forgiven for proudly strutting their stuff after the court's trouncing of Super League earlier this week. But it could be a while before fans forget the footy fashion antics of blokes who probably look their best barrelling down the paddock. As well as introducing their new dress uniform, this season's reserve and first grade sides were paraded on stage. It'll be a slightly delayed start to the ARL competition, but the Knights will still play the South Queensland Crushers at Marathon Stadium on Sunday. Paul Harrigan won't be taking to the field. He'll undergo surgery in Sydney tomorrow to have a bone spur removed from his knee. The Chief says he'll be fit for the season's start in a few weeks.
Monday's cancelled TAB race meeting at Glen Innes highlighted an endemic problem for jockey clubs statewide. There's not enough horses being nominated or punters on course. The declining numbers has struck no one harder than bookmakers. And Tamworth bookie Rob Sweeney has a simple explanation.
There's too many meetings and not enough horses. Like certain days we go to the races and there might only be 35 to 40 horses. Well, if we had more horses, say 70 or 80 horses racing on those particular days, it does bring people to the races.
But while the punters at the track are subsiding, the bookies' presence has stayed the same.
The holdings have dropped alarmingly, and there's not the bookmakers around that there was many years ago. But even today, like certain races that we have, we're over-serviced with bookmakers to what the crowd we're getting at these events.
Punters haven't stopped betting, however. TAB turnover in the region has recorded a slight increase on takings this time last year.
Well, I think we've done very well not to have a decline in sales. A lot of people in this region are doing it tough and have done for some time. I think we'll see real increases in turnover over the next 18 months.
But until on-course turnover increases, Sweeney says bookmakers will have to tough it out.
All the bookmakers are sort of hanging in there, hoping that things will change around, but everyone's suffering, turnover-wise and so forth like that, and all we can just is hope that things get better.